Captain Ethan Cole stood motionless on the bridge of the celestial Voyager, his sharp eyes fixed on the glowing display before him. The faint hum of the ship's systems filled the air, a constant backdrop to the tension that hung thick around the crew. His brow furrowed deeply as he examined the data streaming across the screen, data that should not exist. "Run the scan again, Mara," he ordered, his voice steady but edged with a quiet urgency. Beside him, Lieutenant Mara Vance nodded without hesitation, her fingers dancing across the console as she initiated another sweep of the Helios 9 system. The soft glow of the monitors reflected off her face, but her expression was anything but calm. The celestial Voyager had been dispatched to this uncharted star system on a simple mission: survey barren planets for potential mining. The Helios 9 system was supposed to be empty, a forgotten corner of the galaxy with nothing but cold, lifeless rocks circling a pale, dying star. Every record in the Terran archives confirmed it. Yet, the ship's sensors told a far different story. Mara's voice broke the silence, trembling slightly. "Captain, the readings are consistent. Massive energy signatures from multiple planets, and faint radio signals." She hesitated before adding, "They're human." Dr. Alaric Dane, the science officer, turned from his station, his usually composed demeanor replaced by visible unease. His pale face was illuminated by the soft green glow of his terminal. "Captain," he said slowly, his voice carrying the weight of disbelief, "the third planet, it shows signs of atmospheric engineering. Someone has altered its ecosystem. And the asteroid belt," he paused, as if the words themselves were difficult to say. "It's been completely restructured. Those asteroids didn't form naturally. Someone moved them." Ethan's heart began to pound, though his face betrayed none of his inner turmoil. He leaned forward, gripping the edge of the console. "That's impossible," he said firmly, though the certainty in his voice wavered. "There's no record of any human colony this far from Sol. Nothing beyond the outer colonies." And yet, as the celestial Voyager drifted closer to the third planet, the truth revealed itself in undeniable clarity. The planet's surface, once thought to be barren and lifeless, was alive with light. From orbit, the crew could see sprawling cities glittering like webs of gold and silver, their lights piercing through the darkened hemisphere. Towering structures reached toward the heavens, connected by glowing pathways that shimmered faintly in the planet's thin atmosphere. But it wasn't just the cities. Ships sleek and streamlined, their designs alien to anything Earth had ever constructed, moved gracefully between the planets of the system. Their movements were precise, almost choreographed, as if they followed some invisible rhythm. The sight was mesmerizing and deeply unsettling. Ethan's breath caught in his chest. This wasn't some forgotten colony struggling to survive. This was a civilization advanced, thriving, and impossibly hidden from the rest of humanity. The silence on the bridge was broken by a sudden burst of static. Then, a voice clear and commanding cut through the quiet. "Unidentified vessel, this is Commander Tesserain of the Dominion of Haven. You are entering restricted space. Identify yourself immediately." The voice was unmistakably human, yet there was something in its tone and authority, a confidence that sent a chill down Ethan's spine. He exchanged a glance with Mara, who looked equally stunned. "Dominion of Haven." Ethan repeated under his breath, the words foreign and heavy on his tongue. He had never heard of such a place, let alone a human faction with this level of sophistication. The crew remained silent, their eyes fixed on the captain. For a moment, the only sound was the faint hum of the ship's systems and the distant beeping of the scanners. Ethan straightened, his mind racing. Whoever these people were, they had been hidden for a long time. And now, they had made their presence known. "Lieutenant," Ethan said, his voice calm but firm, "open a channel. Let's see who we're dealing with." As the crew prepared to respond, the planet below seemed to shimmer with an almost ethereal glow, as if it were alive and watching. The celestial Voyager floated in orbit, a lone ship on the edge of a mystery that would change everything they thought they knew about humanity's place in the galaxy. The celestial Voyager glided silently through the vastness of the Helios system, flanked by 3 impossibly sleek ships. These escorts moved with a precision and speed that seemed to defy the laws of physics, their dark hulls reflecting faint glimmers of starlight. They did not communicate, nor did they falter in their course. To the crew of the Voyager, it felt as though they were being herded by shadows, guided deeper into the unknown. As the capital planet, Haven Prime, came into view, the bridge of the celestial Voyager fell silent. Before them lay a world that seemed to shimmer with an otherworldly light, its surface alive with a brilliance that no one could have anticipated. Ethan Cole stood at the viewport, his breath caught in his chest. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. The cities below were a marvel of impossible beauty. Towers of crystalline glass rose high into the atmosphere, their surfaces capturing and refracting the sunlight into a kaleidoscope of colors. Each building seemed to pulse faintly, as if alive, their shapes elegant and organic, as though they had grown rather than been constructed. Between these towers, bridges floated effortlessly, suspended in the air without visible support. They glowed faintly, their surfaces rippling like water under the light of the planet's twin moons. But it wasn't just the architecture. Nature itself seemed to thrive in perfect harmony with the urban sprawl. Lush parks and dense forests wove their way through the cities, their emerald canopies blending seamlessly with the crystalline structures. Waterfalls cascaded from the sides of buildings, their streams feeding into rivers that snaked through the city streets. The air shimmered with a faint golden hue, as if the very atmosphere was imbued with life. The docking platform where the celestial Voyager was directed to land was no less breathtaking. It stretched out like a vast, crystalline flower, its petals unfurling to cradle the ship as it descended. The platform was surrounded by a sea of glowing vegetation, plants that seemed to hum faintly, their leaves emitting soft pulses of light. The crew stepped out hesitantly, their boots clicking against the smooth, glass-like surface of the platform. Waiting for them was a figure who exuded an aura of quiet power. High Administrator Seraphin Kale stood tall and graceful, her posture commanding yet welcoming. Her attire was simple yet elegant, a flowing garment of deep blue that seemed to shimmer like starlight with every movement. Her eyes, a striking shade of silver, locked onto Ethan's with an intensity that made him feel as though she could see straight through him. "Welcome to Haven Prime," she said, her voice smooth and warm, carrying a quiet confidence that immediately silenced the unease in the crew. A faint smile played on her lips, though her gaze remained steady. "I'm sure you have many questions, Captain Cole. And I assure you, you'll find the answers fascinating." Ethan nodded, his throat dry. He had faced countless unknowns in his career, but nothing had prepared him for this. The crew exchanged uncertain glances, but Seraphin's calm demeanor seemed to compel them forward. As they followed her through the station, the wonders of Haven Prime unfolded around them. The interior of the docking station was no less magnificent than the city they had glimpsed from orbit. The walls were made of the same crystalline material, their surfaces alive with shifting patterns of light that seemed to respond to their presence. The air was cool and carried the faint scent of something sweet and floral, though no one could identify its source. Seraphin led them through a wide corridor lined with glowing panels that displayed images of Haven's history. Each panel came to life as they passed, showing glimpses of the Dominion's origins. Ethan paused briefly before one of the images, a massive colony ship, its hull battered and scarred, drifting through the void. The name Eternal Horizon was etched across its side. Seraphin noticed his interest and stopped, her expression softening. "That was our beginning," she said, her voice quieter now, tinged with a hint of reverence. "Over 150 years ago, the Eternal Horizon was meant to carry its passengers to a distant star, a new home for humanity. But fate had other plans. A navigational error sent the ship off course, deep into uncharted space. For years, they drifted, their resources dwindling, their hope fading." She turned to face the group, her eyes gleaming with an emotion Ethan couldn't quite place. "Then, they found this system. The Helios system. It was as though the universe had granted them a second chance. The planets were rich in resources, the conditions perfect for life. They settled here, and slowly, they began to rebuild." Ethan listened intently, his mind racing to piece together the implications of what she was saying. "Why stay hidden?" he asked, his voice breaking the quiet. "Why not reach out to Earth, to the rest of humanity?" Seraphin's smile faded slightly, and for the first time, a shadow passed over her features. "The galaxy was unkind to humanity," she said carefully, her words deliberate. "We were not ready to face its challenges. We needed time to grow, to learn, to prepare ourselves for the dangers that lay beyond." Her gaze swept over the crew, her expression unreadable. "And so, we chose to remain hidden." Ethan couldn't help but admire the sheer scope of their achievements. In just over a century, these settlers had built a civilization that rivaled anything humanity had ever dreamed of. Yet, as Seraphin spoke, he sensed there was more to their story than she was revealing. Her words carried a weight, a carefulness, as though she were holding something back. As they continued deeper into the station, Ethan's unease grew. The beauty of Haven Prime was undeniable, but beneath its shimmering surface, he could feel the undercurrents of something far greater, a secret, vast and ancient, that the Dominion of Haven had guarded for generations. And he couldn't shake the feeling that whatever it was, it would change everything. The revelation of the Dominion of Haven was like a storm tearing through the galaxy. What had once been a quiet, predictable balance of power was now shattered by the emergence of something no one human or alien had foreseen. The news spread faster than light itself, carried on whispers and encrypted transmissions, igniting fear, anger, and curiosity among the great powers of the galaxy. On the shimmering crystalline homeworld of the Zelver Coalition, the council chamber was alive with tension. The room, a cavernous hall of jagged crystal spires that refracted light into 1,000 fractured rainbows, trembled faintly with the raised voices of its delegates. Ambassador Krithix, a towering figure with obsidian black scales and eyes like molten gold, stood at the center of the chamber, his clawed hand slamming down on the crystalline table with a force that sent a sharp, ringing vibration through the air. "Humans cannot be allowed to wield such power," Krithix roared, his voice a guttural snarl that echoed against the chamber walls. His claws left faint scratches on the surface of the table, a testament to his barely restrained fury. "They are a species of chaos and destruction. For centuries, they have been little more than scavengers, clinging to the scraps of technology we allowed them to have. And now, we discover they have hidden this, Haven, a civilization more advanced than we dared to imagine." The other Zelver murmured in agreement, their voices a low, resonant hum that filled the chamber like the growl of an approaching storm. But there was fear in their tones, too. Fear of the unknown. Fear of what humanity might become if left unchecked. Elsewhere, in the lush, bioluminescent groves of the Verdant homeworld, the verdant accord convened in their ancient council glade. The air was thick with the scent of blooming flowers and the faint, musical hum of the verdant, themselves sentient, plant-like beings whose towering forms swayed gently as they spoke. Their voices were soft but carried a weight that resonated through the grove, like the rustling of a great forest in a storm. "If they have hidden one colony," murmured Elder Silvath, her voice like the creak of ancient wood, "how many others might exist? How many secrets has humanity kept from us, growing in the shadows while we turned our gaze elsewhere?" Another verdant, his bark-like skin glistening with dew, added, "And if they have achieved such power in isolation, what might they do now that they have revealed themselves? They are unpredictable, wild, like a fire that burns out of control." The verdant swayed in agreement, their glowing leaves casting shifting patterns of light across the glade. They were a species that valued balance and harmony above all else, and the sudden emergence of Haven was a disruption they could not ignore. Back on Earth, in the cold, sterile halls of the United Terran Command, Admiral Lyra Voss sat alone in her office, staring at the report on her desk. The room was silent, save for the faint hum of the overhead lights. Outside the window, the sprawling city of New Geneva stretched out beneath a gray, overcast sky, its towering skyscrapers shrouded in mist. Voss's hands trembled slightly as she flipped through the pages of the report, her sharp gray eyes scanning the words with disbelief. "An entire human civilization," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "More advanced than anything we've ever built, and we didn't even know they existed." The thought was staggering. For centuries, humanity had believed itself to be alone, struggling to carve out a place for itself in a galaxy dominated by alien powers. And yet, all this time, Haven had been out there, hidden in the shadows, building a civilization that surpassed anything Earth could have imagined. Her jaw tightened as she leaned back in her chair, the weight of the revelation pressing down on her. "What else don't we know?" she muttered, her mind racing with questions. What were Haven's intentions? Why had they chosen to reveal themselves now? And most importantly, how would the rest of the galaxy react? The answer to that last question was already becoming clear. Across the galaxy, the alien powers were in turmoil, their carefully maintained alliances and rivalries thrown into chaos by the sudden appearance of Haven. Debates raged in council chambers and war rooms, each species scrambling to decide how to respond to this new threat or opportunity. But while the galaxy debated, Haven was not idle. Deep beneath the glittering towers of Haven Prime, in a chamber bathed in the soft, golden light of bioluminescent crystals, the Dominion's intelligence network was already at work. Operatives moved silently through the shadows, their faces obscured by masks that shimmered like liquid silver. These were the Watchers, Haven's elite spies, trained to operate in the most hostile environments and gather information from even the most impenetrable sources. For decades, the Watchers had been planting agents across alien worlds, blending seamlessly into their societies. They had listened, observed, and waited, gathering intelligence on the galaxy's powers while remaining undetected. Now, with the Dominion's existence revealed, those agents were more valuable than ever. In a dimly lit control room, a Watcher known only as Cypher stood before a massive holographic display, her gloved hands moving deftly across the controls. Streams of intercepted transmissions filled the air, their voices overlapping in a chaotic symphony of fear and anger. "The Zelver are calling for sanctions," Cypher reported, her voice calm and measured. "The Verdant are pushing for a diplomatic summit, but their council is divided. And Earth," she paused, her gaze shifting to Seraphin Kale, who stood silently at the edge of the room, her silver eyes fixed on the display. "Earth doesn't know what to do. They're afraid, but they're also hopeful. Seraphine's lips curved into a faint smile, though her eyes remained cold and calculating. Hope can be a powerful motivator, she said softly. But fear. Fear is what drives action. Cypher nodded, her fingers dancing across the controls as she brought up a new set of data. What are your orders, High Administrator? Seraphine stepped forward, her gaze sweeping over the room. We will watch. We will listen. And when the time comes, we will act. The galaxy is afraid of us, yes. But fear can be turned to our advantage. Let them see what we have built. Let them wonder what else we are capable of. And when they come to us, whether in friendship or in hostility, we will be ready. The room fell silent, the weight of her words settling over the watchers like a heavy cloak. Outside, the towers of Haven Prime gleamed in the light of the twin moons, their crystalline surfaces reflecting the vast, infinite darkness of the stars. The Zelver Coalition's fleet descended upon the Helios system like a storm of steel and fire, their 2,500 warships cutting through the blackness of space with predatory precision. Each vessel was a masterpiece of Zelver engineering, their jagged hulls gleaming like molten silver under the faint light of distant stars. They moved in perfect formation, a wall of destruction that seemed unstoppable. At the helm of this armada was Supreme Commander Kalis, a figure as imposing as the fleet he commanded. His massive frame was covered in scales that shimmered like liquid metal, reflecting the cold light of the control room around him. His golden eyes burned with disdain as he stared at the holographic map of the Helios system. The humans will fall as they always do, Kalis declared, his voice a low growl that resonated through the bridge. His clawed hand hovered over the display, tracing the path of his fleet as it advanced toward Haven Prime. Quickly and completely. They are a species of chaos, unworthy of the power they dare to wield. Around him, his officers nodded, their expressions a mix of confidence and contempt. For centuries, humanity had been little more than an afterthought to the Zelver, a nuisance to be tolerated, a species destined to remain in the shadow of greater civilizations. The idea that humans could pose a threat to the coalition was laughable. And yet, here they were, mobilizing an entire fleet to crush a single colony. Kayla sneered at the thought, his claws flexing in anticipation. This would be a swift and decisive victory, a reminder to the galaxy of the Zelver's dominance. As the fleet crossed the boundary into the Helios system, the emptiness of space stretched out before them, vast and unervingly silent. There were no patrols, no defenses, no sign of the dominion of Haven at all. Just the cold, quiet void. The commanders exchanged uneasy glances, their confidence wavering ever so slightly. Kalis, however, dismissed their concerns with a wave of his hand. Cowards, he muttered, leaning back in his command chair. They've hidden themselves away, hoping we'll lose interest. But they cannot hide forever. The fleet pressed on, their sensors scanning the system for any sign of life. The planets drifted in silence, their surfaces barren and still. Asteroids floated lazily through the void, their jagged forms casting long shadows in the faint starlight. It was as if the system itself was holding its breath, waiting. And then, the waiting ended. Without warning, the void came alive. The asteroids that had seemed lifeless moments before began to glow, their rocky surfaces splitting apart to reveal hidden weapon platforms. Cannons and missile arrays emerged from their depths, their barrels swiveling to lock onto the approaching fleet. From behind moons and gas giants, ships decloaked one by one, their sleek, angular forms bristling with advanced weaponry. They were unlike anything the Zelver had ever seen, ships that seemed to shimmer with an otherworldly light, their hulls smooth and seamless, as if they had been carved from a single piece of living metal. On the bridge of his flagship, Kahless froze, his golden eyes narrowing as the holographic map of the system lit up with hundreds of new contacts. "What is this?" he snarled, his voice sharp and brittle. "Where did they come from?" The answer came in the form of a single, chilling transmission. A calm, measured voice echoed through the Zelver fleet, its tone devoid of fear or malice. "You have entered Sovereign Dominion space. Turn back now, or face the consequences." Kahless's lips curled into a snarl. "Consequences," he spat, his claws digging into the armrests of his chair. "They dare to threaten us." But before he could issue his orders, the first wave of Zelver ships crossed an invisible threshold and the trap was sprung. From her command center on Haven Prime, Admiral Narration watched the unfolding battle with a calm intensity. The room around her was bathed in a soft, golden light, the walls lined with displays showing every angle of the conflict. Her officers moved with quiet efficiency, their faces betraying no hint of panic or doubt. Naira herself stood at the center of it all, her piercing blue eyes fixed on the main display. She was a woman of sharp features and sharper instincts, her every movement precise and deliberate. "Activate the perimeter grid," she ordered, her voice steady and unyielding. In an instant, the space around the Zelver fleet erupted with light. Invisible barriers shimmered into existence, forming an intricate web of energy that surrounded the alien ships. The first wave of attackers slammed into the shields at full speed, their hulls disintegrating on impact. Explosions blossomed in the void, brief and brilliant, as the Zelver ships were torn apart by forces they could neither see nor understand. Kahless rose from his chair, his eyes wide with shock as the destruction unfolded before him. What is this?" he demanded, his voice trembling with a mixture of rage and disbelief. "How are they doing this?" The remaining Zelver ships faltered, their formations breaking apart as their commanders scrambled to make sense of the chaos. The shields absorbed their firepower effortlessly, the energy rippling outward in waves of iridescent light before dissipating harmlessly. The weapon platforms hidden among the asteroids opened fire, their cannons unleashing beams of searing energy that cut through the Zelver ships like a knife through paper. The Dominion's fleet moved with surgical precision, their ships darting in and out of the fray with an elegance that bordered on unnatural. Back on Haven Prime, Admiral Solis allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. "They underestimated us," she murmured, her gaze never leaving the display. "They thought we were weak, unprepared. But they were wrong." Her officers nodded in silent agreement, their confidence bolstered by the sight of the alien fleet in disarray. The Zelver had come expecting an easy victory, but they had found something far more dangerous, a foe that had spent centuries perfecting the art of war in the shadows. As the battle raged on, the Zelver fleet began to retreat, their once mighty armada reduced to scattered remnants. Kahless stood frozen on the bridge of his flagship, his claws trembling as he stared at the carnage before him. He had never known fear like this, never imagined that humanity, those chaotic, insignificant creatures, could wield such power. In the end, the Zelver fleet fled the Helios system, their pride shattered and their losses immeasurable. The Dominion of Haven had not just defended their home, they had sent a message to the galaxy. They were no longer a forgotten colony, no longer an afterthought. They were a force to be reckoned with, a power that could not be ignored. And as Admiral Solis watched the last of the Zelver ships disappear into the void, she knew that this was only the beginning. The galaxy would not take this defeat lightly. More would come, driven by fear and greed, seeking to challenge the Dominion's newfound strength. But Haven would be ready. The battle in the Helios system shifted from chaos to calculated devastation. What had begun as an overwhelming display of Zelver power was now a carefully orchestrated counter-strike by the Dominion of Haven. Humanity, long dismissed as a species of chaos and desperation, revealed a side of itself the galaxy had never seen, a side of cold, unflinching precision. The void of space became a battlefield alive with motion. Swarms of automated drones, each no larger than a fighter craft, poured out from hidden launch bays across the system. They moved like a living tide, their metallic surfaces glinting under the faint starlight as they darted toward the Zelver fleet. These machines were not mere weapons, they were extensions of Haven's will, their movements impossibly coordinated, their attacks devastatingly efficient. The drones struck first at the engines of the Zelver ships, their sleek forms weaving through enemy fire with effortless grace. They attached themselves to the massive vessels like insects to prey, their claws sinking into hulls of gleaming metal. In moments, the engines sputtered and died, leaving the ships adrift and vulnerable. The drones then turned their attention to the weapons systems, their precision strikes rendering the Zelver fleet defenseless. Explosions rippled across the enemy ships, the fiery bursts of light illuminating the grim faces of their crews. On board the Zelver flagship, Supreme Commander Kala stood at the center of the bridge, his massive form trembling with barely contained rage. The once proud commander, who had entered the Helios system with supreme confidence, now found himself surrounded by chaos. His officers shouted over one another, their voices a cacophony of panic and confusion. The holographic displays that lined the walls flickered with red warnings, each one a reminder of their rapidly deteriorating situation. Kala slammed his clawed fist onto the command console, his golden eyes blazing with fury. "What trickery is this?" he bellowed, his voice echoing through the chamber. "How are they doing this? How are humans doing this?" No one answered him. The truth was too unthinkable, too impossible to put into words. The humans, once seen as little more than scavengers, had outmaneuvered the Zelver at every turn. Their technology, their tactics, their sheer audacity, it was unlike anything the galaxy had ever faced. And the worst was yet to come. From the surface of Haven Prime, massive energy beams lanced through the darkness, their brilliant light cutting through the void like the wrath of a vengeful god. These were no indiscriminate weapons of destruction, they were instruments of precision, each shot carefully calculated to strike at the heart of the Zelver fleet. One by one, the flagship's escorts were obliterated, their hulls splitting apart in dazzling explosions that sent shockwaves rippling through the battlefield. Kalis watched in horror as his fleet was dismantled before his very eyes. His claws tightened around the edges of the console, his breath coming in ragged gasps. This wasn't just a defeat, it was a humiliation. The Zelver coalition, the most feared power in the galaxy, was being brought to its knees by a species they had dismissed as insignificant. Back on Haven Prime, in a chamber that seemed to glow with an inner light, Seraphin Kale stood before the Dominion's council. Her silver eyes, cold and unyielding, swept across the room as she addressed her people. The council chamber was a place of quiet power, its walls adorned with intricate carvings that told the story of humanity's rise from the ashes of its past. The air was heavy with the weight of history, and Seraphin's voice carried that weight as she spoke. "The galaxy has underestimated humanity for too long," she said, her tone calm but laced with steel. "For centuries, they have looked down on us, seeing only what they wanted to see: our struggles, our failures, our chaos. But they forgot what we are capable of. They forgot that we are survivors. Builders. Dreamers." Her words hung in the air, each one a challenge, a declaration, a promise. "Today," she continued, her voice rising with quiet intensity, "they learn the cost of their arrogance. Today, They see what humanity can achieve when we are united, when we are determined, when we refuse to bow. The council members listened in silence, their expressions a mix of awe and resolve. They had seen the reports, watched the battle unfold on the displays that lined the chamber. They knew what was at stake not just for Haven, but for humanity as a whole. This was more than a battle, it was a statement to the galaxy, a reminder that humanity was no longer a species to be ignored or pitied. As Seraphim spoke, the battle raged on. The Zelver flagship, once the pride of their fleet, was now a broken shadow of its former self. Its engines were dead, its weapons silent. The automated drones swarmed around it, their sleek forms darting in and out of the wreckage. Kala stood on the bridge, his claws trembling as he stared at the devastation around him. His officers were silent now, their faces pale and drawn. There was nothing left to say. In the distance, the ships of the Dominion moved with quiet purpose, their sleek forms gliding through the void like predators closing in on their prey. They did not fire indiscriminately, every shot was deliberate, every move calculated. This was not a massacre, it was a lesson. And as the Zelver fleet crumbled, as their once mighty armada was reduced to scattered debris, the message became clear: humanity was no longer a species to be underestimated. They had risen from the shadows, stronger and more determined than anyone had imagined. And they would not be ignored. The void of space, once filled with the chaos of battle, now lay silent. The remnants of the Zelver fleet drifted aimlessly, broken and defeated, their shattered hulls glinting faintly in the distant starlight. The echoes of explosions had faded, leaving an eerie stillness that seemed to stretch across the Helios system. Haven had won, but the true battle was only just beginning. Across the galaxy, the message came without warning. Screens flickered to life on hundreds of worlds, in bustling cities, on desolate outposts, and within the grand halls of alien empires. The face of President Elias Varin appeared, calm yet resolute, his presence commanding attention. He was not a man of great physical stature, but his piercing gray eyes carried the weight of 1,000 years of human struggle, and his voice, steady and unwavering, reached into the hearts of all who listened. For centuries, he began, his tone measured but filled with quiet defiance, humanity has been treated as a minor species, a footnote in the annals of galactic history. We have been dismissed, underestimated, and bound by the rules of others, rules designed to keep us in our place. His words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of truth. On alien worlds, leaders and citizens alike leaned closer to their screens, drawn in by the gravity of his speech. Across the galaxy, the name humanity had often been spoken with disdain or pity, a species seen as fragile and chaotic, forever struggling to find its footing among the stars. But now, that perception was being rewritten. That ends today, Varin continued, his voice growing firmer, each word a declaration of intent. The galaxy has changed. No longer will humanity be bound by the chains of alien dominance. No longer will we be cast aside as insignificant. Today, we stand as equals. Today, we offer you a choice: cooperation or irrelevance. The phrase struck like a thunderclap, rippling through the minds of those who heard it. Cooperation or irrelevance. It was not a threat, not a demand for submission, but a stark reality laid bare. Humanity had risen, and the galaxy now stood at a crossroads. The era of alien dominance is over, Varin said, his gaze unyielding, his voice carrying the weight of an unshakable certainty. The age of unity begins now. As his words echoed across the stars, Haven's fleets emerged from the shadows. One by one, their ships decloaked near alien homeworlds, their sleek, angular forms cutting through the void like silent sentinels. They did not come with weapons primed or shields raised. They came as a statement, a demonstration of humanity's reach and power. The message was clear: Haven could strike anywhere, at any time, but they chose not to. On the Zelver homeworld, the skies filled with the faint outlines of Haven's ships, their presence casting long shadows over the sprawling cities below. In the grand chambers of the Zelver Council, the once proud leaders of the coalition watched in stunned silence. For centuries, they had ruled with an iron grip, their dominance unchallenged. Now, they faced a reality they could scarcely comprehend, a reality where they were no longer at the top. But Haven did not come to destroy. They came to offer something far more profound. From their ships, emissaries descended, their forms cloaked in the soft glow of protective fields. These were not soldiers or conquerors, but diplomats, their expressions calm, their hands empty of weapons. They walked into the halls of alien governments, into the heart of worlds that had once dismissed humanity as insignificant, and they spoke not of war, but of partnership. On the lush, crystalline world of the Ilveri, where shimmering spires rose into the sky like frozen waterfalls, Haven's representatives met with the elders of the Shimmering Council. The Ilveri, a race of ethereal beings whose translucent skin glowed faintly with inner light, had long viewed humanity as crude and primitive. But as they listened to the emissaries, as they saw the strength and unity that humanity had forged, they began to see them in a new light. On the scorched deserts of Quran V, where the reptilian Drakthar clans ruled with brutal efficiency, Haven's ships descended like silent specters. The Drakthar, who valued strength above all else, regarded the humans with wary respect. They had heard of the battle in the Helios system, of the Zelver's defeat, and they understood what it meant. Strength recognized strength, and for the first time, the Drakthar saw humanity as worthy of their attention. And so it went, across countless worlds. Haven's fleets appeared not as conquerors, but as heralds of a new reality. They spoke of unity, of a galaxy no longer divided by old rivalries and hierarchies. They offered technology, knowledge, and the promise of a future where all species could thrive together. But beneath their words lay an unspoken truth: humanity would no longer wait for the galaxy to accept them. They had claimed their place, and they would not be moved. Back on Haven Prime, President Varen stood in the central command hall, his gaze fixed on the holographic display that showed the galaxy in all its vastness. Around him, his advisors and military leaders watched in silence, their faces a mix of pride and determination. They knew the road ahead would not be easy. There would be those who resisted, who clung to the old ways, who saw humanity's rise as a threat. But they also knew that they had crossed a threshold, one from which there was no turning back. The galaxy will not change overnight, Varen said, his voice quiet but resolute. But it will change. We have shown them what humanity is capable of. Now, it is up to them to decide whether they will stand with us or be left behind. In the vast expanse of space, under the light of 1,000 stars, the age of unity had begun. And for the first time in its long, tumultuous history, humanity stood not as a species struggling to survive, but as a force that could shape the destiny of the galaxy itself. The skies above Earth were a deep, endless blue when the transmission arrived. In the heart of the United Terran Command's headquarters, a room filled with the hum of machinery and the quiet murmurs of watchful officers fell silent as the holographic image of Seraphin Kale materialized. Her presence, even as a projection, was commanding. Her silver eyes, sharp and unyielding, seemed to pierce through the distance between her and those who watched her speak. Admiral Voss, a man hardened by decades of service and countless battles, stood at the center of the room, his broad shoulders tense with suspicion. He had seen too much betrayal, too many false promises, to trust easily. And yet, as Seraphine began to speak, there was something in her voice, something steady, resolute, and strangely hopeful that made even him pause. "We are not your enemies," Seraphine began, her tone calm but firm, her words carrying the weight of a promise. "We are your future. Join us, and together we can ensure humanity's survival and prosperity." Her words echoed through the chamber, filling the air with a quiet, undeniable power. The officers exchanged uncertain glances, their faces a mixture of doubt and curiosity. For centuries, Earth had stood alone, struggling to maintain its place in a galaxy that seemed determined to leave it behind. Now, for the first time, there was an offer of unity, an offer that could change everything. Admiral Voss's jaw tightened as he considered her words. He had spent his life defending Earth, fighting to protect a home that had often seemed fragile and divided. Trusting anyone outside their borders, even fellow humans, felt like a risk too great to take. But as he looked into Seraphine's unwavering gaze, he saw no deceit, no hidden agenda, only determination and the faintest flicker of hope. After a long, heavy silence, Voss finally spoke, his voice low and gravelly. "If we do this," he said, his tone cautious, "it's because we believe in humanity's survival. Not just yours. Not just ours. But all of us." Seraphine inclined her head, a small, almost imperceptible smile touching her lips. "That is all we ask," she replied. "Unity, Admiral. Together, we can achieve what neither of us could alone." Reluctantly, Earth agreed to the alliance. It was not a decision made lightly, nor without reservations. But deep within the hearts of those who had fought so long to keep humanity alive, there was a stirring, a faint, fragile hope that perhaps this time, they would not stand alone. The first emissaries from Earth arrived on Haven Prime weeks later, their ships descending through the planet's golden skies like cautious travelers entering a new world. The people of Haven greeted them not as strangers, but as brothers and sisters, their shared humanity bridging the vast distances that had once separated them. For the first time in centuries, humanity stood together not as fractured nations or isolated colonies, but as one people united by a common purpose. In the great halls of Haven Prime, where the banners of the Dominion fluttered gently in the artificial breeze, the leaders of Earth and Haven shook hands, their expressions solemn but filled with quiet resolve. The alliance was fragile, its future uncertain, but it was a beginning, a spark of unity in a galaxy that had long sought to divide them. The stars above Haven Prime shimmered like scattered diamonds, their light casting a soft glow over the planet's surface. Ethan Cole stood on the edge of a vast observation deck, his hands resting on the cool metal railing as he gazed up at the endless expanse of space. The air was crisp and still, carrying with it the faint hum of the city below, a city alive with the energy of a new era. Ethan's mind was a whirlwind of memories. He thought of the battles fought, the sacrifices made, and the countless lives that had been changed forever. He thought of the Zelver fleet, once so unstoppable, now a distant memory. He thought of Seraphine Kale, her voice steady and unyielding as she spoke of unity and hope. And he thought of Earth, its people finally stepping out from the shadows of fear and isolation to join their brothers and sisters among the stars. As he stood there, lost in thought, the door behind him slid open with a soft hiss. Seraphine stepped onto the deck, her presence quiet but undeniable. She moved to stand beside him, her gaze following his to the stars above. "You're thinking about everything we've been through," she said, her voice soft but certain. Ethan nodded, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "It's hard not to," he admitted. "It feels unreal, sometimes. Like we've crossed a line we can never go back from. Seraphine turned to look at him, her silver eyes filled with a quiet intensity. We have, she said simply. But that's what progress is, Ethan. It's stepping into the unknown, even when it terrifies us. Especially when it terrifies us. He let her words sink in, their truth settling deep within him. For so long, humanity had been defined by its struggles, its wars, its divisions, its endless fight for survival. But now, for the first time, it was defined by something greater. Something brighter. We didn't rise through conquest, Ethan said after a long silence, his voice quiet but filled with conviction. We rose by refusing to accept the limits others placed on us. We rose because we believed we could be more. Seraphine smiled, a rare softness in her expression. And now we are, she said. More than anyone ever thought possible. Above them, the stars seemed to shimmer with new possibilities, their light a reminder of the vast, uncharted future that lay ahead. Humanity, once underestimated and oppressed, had become a beacon of hope and strength, a force that could no longer be ignored. As the two of them stood together, the city below came alive with celebration. Lights danced across the skyline, and the air was filled with the sound of voices raised in joy and triumph. It was a new dawn, not just for Haven, but for all of humanity, a dawn that promised a future filled with unity, strength, and endless potential. And in that moment, as Ethan gazed out at the galaxy that had once seemed so vast and indifferent, he felt a quiet certainty settle over him. Humanity had found its place among the stars not through fear, not through domination, but through the unyielding belief that they could be more. The age of unity had begun. And for the first time, the galaxy was theirs to shape.